Welcome back, dear friends. This is Saurabh at Lit E City with a brand new session of Facts That Matter, a collection of interesting facts across English literature, various genres, writers, works, characters, all these things that matters. And today's episode is very interesting one and taken from a very important leaf of English literature, that is Victorian poetry. It's a long century, the Victorian age, almost 70 to 80 years, and diverse development in the field of poetry. On one hand, we see the influences of romantic tradition. On the other hand, there are new experiments, new roads taken. So it's a very interesting, we can say, period, not only for novel writing but also for poetry writing and poets. In this particular episode, I have tried to collect some facts that are fascinating as well as interesting and important. Okay, so we will take our first fact about Michael Field. Okay, dear friends, now as the name assumes Michael Field, and as you very well know, it was a common practice during the Victorian age for women writers to take a male pseudonym. But what makes this particular name special is that it is pseudonym Michael Field, not of one woman, but Catherine Bradley and her niece Edith Cooper. So two women writing collaboratively, and they published not one or two, but eight books of poetry and 27 plays in 19th century Britain. For most of the time, they were able to hide the reality behind this name, but later they reveal it to Browning and then Oscar Wilde, and then later it came to the general public information about these two. One of their earliest volumes, long ago, it took inspiration from Sappho of Lesbos. Now, Sappho was an ancient and very famous Roman poet. She was the most celebrated poet of ancient Greece, and in fact, it was with her name Lesbos that we have the present term lesbian, indicating intimate relationship between two women. Now, their strangest volume of poetry is Wim Cha, Flame of Love. Actually, this flame of love is none other than their beloved dog, and the book of poem is dedicated to them. So you can see the experiment done by these two ladies who were quite ahead of their time. Okay, our second facts, dear friends, is related with one particular poem, Rose Aylmer. Now, Rose Aylmer, it stands out as the most popular and known work by W.S. Lander. He was what we say a rather minor poet during this Victorian age. He belonged to the early part. In fact, he is from the Romantic age. We would call him better, though he belonged to the 19th century. And actually, if we talk about the genesis of the poem, Rose Aylmer was a young lady, and she was poet's love interest. She sailed to India with an aunt in 1798, and 2 years later died of cholera in Calcutta. Lander composed this poem, and it became an instant hit and popular. It was published in many anthologies, and now the fame Lander basically was more popular for his oriental and exotic themes, which is displayed in works like Jabir, which was a heroic poem. Okay, friends, going to our next particular fact, and this fact is related with Av Atakwe Wale. Av Atakwe Wale, it is an elegy. It is an elegy written by Charles Swinburne in memory of his late friend and fellow French poet Charles Baudelaire. Now, Charles Baudelaire, he was very important name in continental poetry or French poetry. In fact, It was Swinburne himself who introduced Baudelaire poetry in England through his The Spectator Review of 1862, and he was very close friend to this particular Charles Baudelaire. If we talk about the poem itself, Atque Vol, these are the famous last words of the Latin poet Catullus' elegy for his brother. So, actually, Swinburne has tried to, we can say, imitate or carry forward the tradition of writing for brother. So, you can understand this particular, he has written the elegy for his brother, and here Swinburne is treating Baudelaire as an elder brother and has written this particular elegy. The opening lines of the poem are quite popular, and it has been taken from a reference point of view in many later works. Shall I stew on the roses, or you or laurel? Brother, on this that was the veil of thee. These are the opening lines of the poem. Okay. Our next fact about Victorian age is spasmodic poets. Now, dear friends, spasmodic poets is a group of British poets. They belong to the Victorian era, and the term was originally applied by Thomas Carlyle. He was, obviously, you all know, a very important Victorian critic, and he applied this term to Lord Byron. Lord Byron, and you can understand by this term, spasmodic, full of dramatic and breathless passion. These things he associated with the poetry of Byron. But later, spasmodic poets like George Gilfillan, Philip Bailey, Sidney Dobell, Alexander Smith, and Ebenezer Jones. These all are now at present considered to be rather minor poets during this period, but they were at that time writing poems that were later considered to be part of this school, particular spasmodic poets. Spasmodic poetry frequently took the form of verse drama. It was a rather brief living vogue of Victorian age, the protagonist of which was often a poet, and the poet is often in a process of thinking or ruminating about the poetic career. That is why Elizabeth Barrett's Browning famous poem Aurora Leigh, Tennyson's Maud, Longfellow's Golden Legend, these all are also treated as spasmodic poetry. But the interesting fact, the fact which is very important for you to remember, is that it was William Edmund Townes Ayrton's parody of this particular genre, Vermilion, with the subtitle A Spasmodic Tragedy. This particular work and this particular subtitle, it popularized the term. So sometimes, dear friends, in NET paper, questions are asked from minor schools, or rather we can say those schools and movements which are not so popular. This one is one of them, and I hope you will now remember this particular school also. Now we are going to talk about a very popular poem. It is one of the most famous poems by Rudyard Kipling, The Ballad of East and West. Dear friends, this particular ballad tells the story of a raid, a loot by Kamal, or we can say Kamal, who is an Afghan warrior, and he made on a horse which belongs to an English colonel. Now, Colonel's son, we don't have the name in the poem, he pursues Kamal into enemy's territory. He has taken help of the local people in the Afghan territory or border, and the whole poem displays Kamal's and Colonel's sons. They try to outmatch each other in both courage and generosity, and in the end, when Kamal is very much impressed by the bravery of English colonel's son, he offers him the horseback, because he says he feels that the animal itself is very much inclined to go back to to its original owner, and then he sends his son along with the colonel's son so that he can reach his home harmlessly. When they reach the fort and the people, the army associated with Colonel try to fight back with these people. Now this is time for English Colonel's son, and he stops them, telling them that this person is like my brother. But we have to remember, more than the poem, the very opening line, the first line, which has become like a catchphrase. Ah, east is east and west is west, and never the twain shall meet. It shows that there is, we can say, irreconcilable break or fault line between Eastern values and Western values. This was the opinion of Rudyard Kipling. We are now going to discuss about another, we can say, rather quirky or rather out of normal order work, That's Just Book. It is a pseudo-Jacobean drama by Thomas Lowell Beddoes. Now, he was once again a rather minor poet. It was subtitled The Fool's Tragedy, and he himself described it as a florid Gothic. Now, Beddoes' morbid fascination with mortality, it was expressed with the satirical irony, ridicule of the futile idealization of physical beauty, coarse jesting on bodily functions, dissected corpses, skeleton, and all kind of those things which create a repugnance. They are presented in this particular poem with a relish. But still, the best part of this wild and undisciplined work are once again the songs, especially this popular song, The Ghost's Moonshine. So, bus, you have to remember this only thing, That's Just Book, written by Thomas Lowell Beddoes. A very, very important movement, it is Chartist poetry. Now, Chartist poetry, it refers to the verse which is affiliated with the Chartist movement, which was rather a social movement of this particular decade, 1838 to 1848. Some established poets related with this movement are Massey, Ernest Jones, Thomas Cooper, and W.J. Linton. Now, friends, what was Chartism? Chartism was basically a working class movement which emerged in 1836, and it was most active between 1838 and 1848. Its main aim was to gain political right and influence for working classes. You can see this famous poem, No Enemies by Charles Mackay. You have no enemies, you say. Alas, my friend, the boast is poor. He who has mingled in the fray of duty that the brave endure must have made fools. So these are the poems, these are popular poems in which Chartist poets have declared their intention. Another very, you can say, influential movement or school of the time is Rhymer's Club. W.B. Yeats, Ernest Rice, and T.W. Ralston. They founded Rhymer's Club in 1819 in London, and initially it was an informal club for young poets and writers. The group met at a old Cheshire Cheese public house, London, at a particular we can say joint, and they read aloud and criticize each other's work. In fact, later they published 2 volumes of verse, the Book of Rhymers, quite late in 1892, and after a year, the second Book of Rhymers Club, 1894. The other poets associated who were quite influenced by W.B. Yeats are John Davidson, Ernest Dowson, Lionel Johnson, Arthur Symonds, Oscar Wilde. Very important fact related with this, it's later referred to, many of these poets are the tragic generation. So you have this particular term, the tragic generation. You also have a term related with 1920s and 30, the lost generation. Don't get confused between these two. We have very important and interesting fact now, dear friends. This is about The Burrow. It is a collection of poems by George Crabbe, published in 1810, written in heroic couplets. The poems are arranged as a series of 24 letters, and these letters are written by various characters, fictional characters, and they cover various aspects of character in a particular village. So it is, you have to be, this is very important from our examination point of view, that it is a poem and it is written in a form of 24 letters. And among these, Peter Grimes, which is the 22nd of the 24 letters, it is the best known poem about Peter Grimes. He is a very sadistic kind of fisherman who basically takes into his service some fellow persons, then he kills them, starving them, and later he becomes quite, sad about losing them and being alone in this world. So it's a very, we can say, psychological, but still having a philosophical vein, particular work. Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. All of us are very much informed about this great work, and the translation, which proved to be highly popular during the Victorian age. It was translated by Edward Fitzgerald and published initially anonymously. Now loosely he translated from the original Persian verses written by Omar Khayyam, who was known as the astronomer poet of Persia, and he was we can say a hedonist who believed in the transience of life, and he believed that we must enjoy until we are here on the earth. Fitzgerald's inspired text became one of the best known English language poems of the century. There are so many phrases taken from these translations that have become titles, or we can say prologues, or the subtitles of many later works. I have here taken a very famous, we can say, 4 lines. The moving finger writes. This itself is the title of a work by I think Agatha Christie. Having great moves on, nor all thy pity and nor wit shall lure it back to the cancel half a line, nor all thy tear wash out a word of it. Okay, and then we come to our last fact of the day, Jabberwocky. Now, all those who are interested in nursery rhyme, they must have heard and read about this particular term. It is a nonsensical ballad written by Lewis Carroll in 1871. A nonsensical ballad is basically targeted at children, but there are critics who study them in some hidden or written between the lines context. The poem appears in his novel Through the Looking Glass, which is a sequel to his very popular Alice in Wonderland, and Carroll uses nonsensical words. You can see here brilling and slithy, Guy Gimble, Mincy, and Outgrabe, Jabberwock. This is basically a tale of good versus evil, and culminates in the killing of this particular monster, Jabberwock. Though he presents all type of physical attributes of Jabberwock, but still we are not able to make a concrete guess which type of creature is this Jabberwock. So Jabberwocky, this is in itself, it has become a word. Jabberwock means gibberish or nonsensical kind of talk. Okay friends, that's all for today. I hope you are enjoying this particular session, these particular videos about interesting and important facts from English literature. Keep watching, keep supporting. Thank you, dear friends.